The moon hung low and pale above the desert, stretched thin like a blade across the endless sweep of sky. Its silver light bathed the land in cold clarity, tracing every rock and shadow. Tom Hale rode his weary gelding through the gulch, his eyes scanning the ridges as if the calves he had been chasing would miraculously appear. His ranch was hanging by threads of hope and barbed wire, and each missing animal meant more hunger, more debt, another day's fight against ruin. Dust clung to his shirt, sweat dried stiff on his skin, but he pressed on because quitting was a luxury he couldn't afford. That was when he heard it, a scream. Sharp, human, female. The sound shot through the quiet desert like a rifle crack, freezing him mid-breath. He pulled the reins hard, his horse tossing its head in protest, ears twitching. The sound came again, higher this time, panicked, carrying a weight that no coyote or night bird could mimic. Without hesitation, Tom dug his heels into the gelding's flanks and rode toward it, his hand already sliding to the rifle strapped to his saddle. The gulch widened suddenly, moonlight spilling into an open space cluttered with jagged rocks. And there he saw them. Two young women pressed back against the edge of a cliff, their dark braids swinging as they tried to shield each other. Their clothing was torn from running, their breath visible in short, frantic bursts. Surrounding them were three men, drifters Tom knew too well. He'd seen them in town before, leaning against the saloon walls, their eyes sharp and hungry for trouble. "Back off," Tom called, his voice steady though his heart thudded painfully. He had raised the rifle and now held it level, the barrel glinting cold in the moonlight. The nearest outlaw sneered, turning slowly toward him. "Well, if it ain't poor Tom Hale. Didn't think you'd still be crawling around this desert." Tom ignored the barb. "Leave them, now." The youngest of the three spat in the dirt, his hand brushing the butt of his revolver. "These squaws ain't your concern. Ride on before you make a mistake you won't ride away from." Tom's jaw tightened. He had no business interfering, he knew that. The Apache were their own people, their own law. But seeing those girls, terror shadowing their faces as they clung to each other, made something deep inside him burn. He couldn't live with himself if he turned away. He was already poor, already half forgotten by the world. What was his life worth if he let it cheapen further by cowardice? "I'll say it again," Tom said, his voice low and firm. "Let them go." The standoff snapped like dry kindling. The youngest outlaw drew first, a flash of steel in the dark. Tom fired from the saddle, the shot cracking like thunder. The man staggered back, clutching his chest before dropping to the ground with a thud. The other two cursed, diving for cover behind rocks, bullets sparking against stone as they opened fire. Tom's horse screamed, rearing, but he threw himself from the saddle and hit the ground running. "Down," he barked at the sisters, grabbing their arms and pulling them toward a slab of rock. Bullets whined past his ears, and dust exploded near his boots. He crouched, pressing his back to the stone, the girls huddled close behind him. The older sister's eyes, dark and wide, locked on him. Fear lived there, yes, but also defiance. She whispered something to the younger, who clung to her arm and buried her face. Tom forced himself to steady his breathing, loading another round. The night erupted with gunfire again. Tom peeked from cover and fired, catching one outlaw in the shoulder and spinning him down into the dirt. The last man howled, furious, his shots coming harder, faster, the rock splintering inches from Tom's head. He ducked, teeth gritted, sweat cold on his brow. His rifle clicked empty. He tossed it aside and drew his revolver, the weight of it both comfort and curse. He was outgunned, outnumbered, at least until a moment ago. Now it was just one against one, but the outlaw had the advantage of cover. The younger sister whimpered softly, and Tom felt the sound drive straight into his chest. He couldn't let them see him falter. Couldn't let them think death was the only ending. "Stay behind me," he muttered, rising halfway, revolver ready. He moved to another rock, bullets chasing him across the open ground. The outlaw's laugh echoed, cruel and wild. "You'll die for nothing, Hale. Just a broke fool playing hero." Tom clenched his teeth. Better a fool than a coward, he shot back, his voice carrying. The outlaw lunged then, knife in hand, coming from the shadows with a snarl. Tom fired once. The man jerked, staggered, then collapsed into the dust, the knife clattering harmlessly beside him. Silence descended, heavy and absolute. Tom's chest heaved as he lowered the revolver, his arm shaking with the release of tension. The acrid smell of gunpowder hung thick in the cool desert air. He turned, his eyes falling on the sisters. The older one rose slowly, her hand resting lightly on his arm. You saved us, she said, her voice steady though her breath was uneven. Her accent colored the words, but her meaning was clear. Tom swallowed hard, shaking his head. Just did what I had to. The younger sister's eyes brimmed with tears as she whispered, they would have killed us. Tom looked away, scanning the dead men sprawled in the dirt. His stomach knotted. He had killed before. Wars and border skirmishes had demanded it, but this was different. These weren't soldiers. These were men, rotten as they were, who would now lie unburied in the desert. And he had tied himself to something much bigger than a gunfight. The Apache never forgot debts, never forgave trespasses lightly. He had meddled in their lives, and the weight of that hung heavier than the revolver in his hand. Not while I was breathing, he murmured, answering her words in his own conscience. As the moon traced its way higher into the sky, Tom knew one thing for certain, he had chosen his side, whether or not it was wise. And the desert would see to it that he carried the burden of that choice for the rest of his days. The dawn bled slowly across the horizon, painting the desert in washes of gold and rose. The night's cold still clung to Tom's skin, but he barely felt it. He had ridden through the dark alongside the two sisters, his horse stumbling with exhaustion, his own bones aching as though weighed down with stones. The silence between them had been thick, broken only by the creak of leather and the soft thud of hooves. Every so often, Tom had looked at the girls, at their tired faces, their wary glances at him, the younger one nodding against her sister's shoulder. They didn't run from him. They didn't leave him behind. Instead, they led him to the place that now loomed before him, the Apache camp. Smoke curled upward from several fires, the smell of wood smoke and roasted maize drifting on the crisp morning air. Children darted between hide tents, their laughter echoing, while dogs barked in short bursts. Women moved gracefully with baskets balanced in their arms. Men sharpened blades, tested bows, tended horses tethered near the edge of camp. It was a world both alien and startlingly alive, and Tom felt like a shadow drifting into a place of color and rhythm. The sisters dismounted first, sliding from the horse with fluid motions, their feet kicking up small clouds of dust. Tom followed, his boots striking the ground heavier, louder. Heads turned, conversations hushed. The shift was immediate, curiosity hardening into suspicion, then suspicion into something sharper. Eyes narrowed, hands reached toward knives, toward rifles propped nearby. He felt the burn of their stares as though arrows had already pierced his skin. He raised his hands slowly, palms outward, his rifle strapped across his back but hanging useless. I brought your daughters back, he said, voice steady but low. They were in danger. He stopped. Words in his mouth felt flimsy in the presence of so many watching. The younger sister rushed forward, almost stumbling, and flung herself into the arms of a tall man standing at the camp's center. His hair was streaked with gray, his face carved by years of sun and battle, his presence like the weight of stone. His eyes flicked to Tom with the precision of a hawk's. The younger girl spoke quickly, her words flowing fast in her own tongue. Though Tom couldn't understand them, he understood the emotion, the trembling gratitude, the relief, the fear still shaking her voice. The older sister, however, did not collapse into safety. She stood apart, her chin lifted, her eyes locked on Tom as though daring him not to falter now. Her silence was heavy, deliberate. The man she had approached stepped forward, releasing the younger girl with a firm hand to her shoulder. He came to stand only a few feet from Tom. You are the one who fought for them. His English was measured, each word sharpened like a blade. Tom inclined his head. I am. You killed 3 men, the chief said, his tone not accusing, not impressed, merely fact. Tom swallowed, his throat dry. They gave me no choice. It was their lives, or the lives of your daughters. A murmur rippled through the gathered people. Some voices held doubt, others anger. Tom felt the pressure of the moment sink deeper into his chest. His knees begged him to buckle, but he stayed upright, his boots firm in the dust. Why? The chief pressed, his dark eyes unblinking. Why do this? These are not your kin. Not your people. Why risk your life? Tom drew in a breath. He thought of the empty ranch waiting for him, the sagging roof, the barren fields, the loneliness that hollowed him out every night. He thought of the way those sisters had looked on the cliff's edge, defenseless yet refusing to yield. Because it was right, he said finally. His voice was quiet but carried. Because I couldn't turn away. I couldn't live with myself if I had. Silence again. A crow called harshly from somewhere in the brush. The men nearest the chief glanced at each other, muttering low, but the chief did not move. He studied Tom as though weighing his soul in his palm. Finally, he raised his hand, silencing the whispers around them. In our ways, the chief said, a life saved is not forgotten. A man who saves another does not walk away empty. Balance must be made, debt must be honored. His gaze shifted, and he gestured toward the older sister. My daughter, Ayanna, owes her life to you. By our law, she is bound to you unless you release her. Tom's heart jerked, and the world seemed to tilt beneath him. Bound, he hadn't done this for reward, hadn't thought beyond the need to stop blood from being spilled. His mouth opened, but before words could escape, Ayanna stepped forward. She stood tall, shoulders squared, her eyes burning like fire in the morning sun. I do not seek release, she said clearly. Her voice cut through the camp, stronger than the chief's even. He fought for us, he bled for us, he could have ridden away but he did not. I will stand with him. The younger sister gasped, clutching their father's arm. Shock rippled through the camp, murmurs, disbelief, sharp intakes of breath. The chief's face was unreadable stone, but his eyes were sharp, flicking between his daughter and the ragged rancher who looked more like a stray dog than a hero. You would claim this man? The chief asked, his tone low, dangerous. Yes, Ayanna answered, never wavering. Tom felt as though the ground itself had fallen away. He had spent years trudging through dust, half a ghost of a man, resigned to loneliness. And now here was this woman, strong, proud, choosing him without hesitation. He felt unworthy, but also alive in a way he hadn't in decades. I won't dishonor her, he said finally, his voice rough, ragged with emotion he barely understood. If she chooses me, I'll stand by her. I'll protect her. The chief stared at him long and hard, then nodded once, sharp as a knife. So be it. From this day, your fates are bound. If you keep her safe, you will be one of us. If you fail her, the desert will take you. Gasps rose from the camp, some in approval, others in discontent. But none spoke against the decision. Law was law. Ayanna moved to stand beside Tom, her hand brushing his. It was a light touch, but it burned through him like fire. He looked at her, met her gaze, and for the first time in years, he felt that the emptiness inside him had been filled with something fierce and real. The sun climbed higher, warming the camp, setting the desert aglow. Tom Hale, the poor rancher with nothing but a broken fence and a dying herd, had become something else entirely. A man tied to a people, to a woman, to a fate he hadn't chosen but could no longer deny. And as the chief turned back to his people, the judgment sealed, Tom realized this was no ending. This was only the first step into a life he could never have imagined when he first rode into the gulch.